Hey, MCARBO brother. I'm Chris Nelson, President of MCARBO. Really excited to introduce the new Stoeger M3000 and M3500 trigger spring kit for your Stoeger shotgun. Really love this one. You guys brought this idea to us. We didn't really know much about them, but we set out to do something about that trigger once you guys kept repeatedly asking for it, and that's how we operate. So really excited to have this one for you. Started at about a 7.5 pound trigger, and we got it down to 5.5, 2 pound trigger pull reduction. Really nice, taking you out of that really excessive range and putting you down into something much more operable. You know, you're out there hunting, shooting, you don't need to have a 7.5 pound trigger. So a good solid 25% trigger pull reduction, really love this. And we didn't compromise any sort of the reliability or the function, no light strikes, no issues whatsoever. So really excited about it, really pumped that we didn't have any drawbacks. There was enough room in there for us to get a good, smooth, lighter trigger pull reduction. Really excited about it. Let's get on over tabletop. Show what we did. Before we get started, let's go ahead and check our firearms together as usual. Check the chamber, check the bolt face, check the magazine tube. This firearm's clear. Let's see what kind of factory trigger pull we're starting with. 7 pounds, 6 ounces. Let's take one more to confirm. 7 pounds, 6.1 ounces. Parts needed for this build: the Stoeger M3000 M3500 trigger spring kit by MCARBO includes a lighter hammer spring and a lighter custom firing pin spring to give you a nice, even, reliable trigger pull reduction. Tools needed for this build: 1/16 inch punch, 3/32 inch punch, 1/8 inch punch, hammer, bench block, micro tip flathead screwdriver, regular tip flathead, needle nose pliers, and as always guys, make sure we're an iPro. All right, so we'll get started with a real quick disassembly. We're gonna need to pull out the trigger guard. We're also gonna need to remove that bolt, but we'll start by removing the barrel first. So moving our way down here, the magazine tube nut, we're gonna go ahead and loosen that, pull it right off so we can get the barrel off. All right, there it is. Set that down. Now we can just pull on that barrel. You're gonna see it separate from the action there. We'll slide this barrel all the way out. All right, you can see the action bar and the action bar spring here. So action bar, spring. Sliding that barrel off. We'll just set that aside, won't need that. All right, you can see the action bar locates in the bolt, so we can't get that off yet. We've got to pop off this charging handle. This charging handle seems like there's a trick to it, but there's really not. It's just held in by a detent, a really stout detent in there. So it just helps you take your flathead, and we're just gonna pry up on the bottom of that charging handle, and it'll pop right out. And that's gonna push back on the bolt a little bit, and then you'll be able to get it out. And that's gonna release it. We can slide the whole thing out. You can see here's your bolt. All right, so you can see there's the detent there on the back side of that bolt that holds the charging handle in, and there's a little cutout there on the actual charging handle where that detent locates into it and locks it in place. So it's pretty stout in there to keep it located in place. All right, so there's our bolt. We're gonna get into that here in a second. Now we'll go ahead and we'll take the action bar off and the action bar spring. They just slide right out. And you can see how this bolt locates right in the action bar, just like that. So that's important. We got to put it back together. Definitely want to replicate that. But we can set all this aside for a second. Don't need to focus on it. We need to go ahead and get out this trigger guard next. You'll notice on this takedown pin, there's a side that's got a much wider head on it. Flip it on over, and you'll see there's a side a little bit more narrow. It's a side with none of the markings on it. You know, over here you can see Stoeger M3500. Over here, nothing. So just grab your bench block, center up on it, take your 1/8 inch punch and your hammer and just tap it right out. Should be pretty easy to get out. There's the pin. You can see that. There's the head on it there, the wider end. All right, we'll just set it down. Now we can just turn it upright. We'll just pull up and out on this trigger assembly. Just like that. And there it is. All right, so we got all the major components out of it now. All right, so you can see these are all the components you should have here in front of you. Real quick disassembly. So we got our trigger guard here with all the trigger linkage inside. We've got our action bar spring, our action bar, charging handle, the takedown pin. This is our bolt here, magazine tube nut. All right, here's the receiver, buttstock, magazine tube, and our barrel up here. So everything's out at this point. Now we can go ahead and start replacing some springs. Let's go ahead and grab our MCARBO trigger spring kit. All right, so here's our MCARBO trigger spring kit for the Stoeger M3000 M3500. All right, it's got a lighter custom hammer spring and a lighter custom firing pin spring right here. Go ahead and open it up. We'll save this bag for the factory springs. All right, there's your 2 springs right there. Hammer spring, firing pin spring. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll start with the firing pin spring first. All right, so we got our lighter firing pin spring here, and we just need the bolt. So all we got to do is to get this firing pin retaining pin out. You notice there's a little O-ring on it. Just push in on this firing pin, take your flathead, and just pry that pin right up and out. Simple as that. There's the pin right there with the little O-ring on it. All right, set that down for a second. Let our firing pin out. There's the firing pin. Here's the factory spring right here. All right, so we'll go ahead and compare them. So I got the MCARBO spring here on the right, factory spring on the left. You can tell there's definitely a good difference in wire diameter. This one is definitely lighter. It's hard to kind of get it. That's a good example right there. I was gonna say it's kind of hard to hold them end to end like this, but even if you just check that spring tension functions on a small portion, you can see major difference with the MCARBO spring over here. So really excited about this. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and drop this in, put the factory spring aside. Simple, just go ahead and throw that lighter spring right there on your firing pin. And drop that firing pin right in. Now notice there's this little neck right here, it's a little thinner. That's where that pin needs to go to capture and locate, keep it all in place. That's where it sits there. And really, you just press it right in. I mean, it's super easy to press right in. You want to make sure it's in there good, though. All right, so it's all in and captured, and make sure it doesn't spring out. So we're good. Half of it's done at this point. Pretty fast and straightforward process. So we'll set this bolt aside. Now let's grab the trigger mechanism. We're going to go ahead and dive right into this. All right, so we got our custom lighter hammer spring here from the kit. Now what we need to do is go ahead and install that. And it's pretty straightforward here. So you can quickly see, here's your hammer. All right, you pull the trigger, releases, and you'll notice this little hammer spring cap. Hammer spring is captured down underneath there. You can barely see it. You can see the hammer spring down there. This is your hammer spring cap. Now this is your cartridge drop lever right here. Cartridge drop lever spring. Those are really the only things we need to move out of the way so we can get this hammer spring cap up and out. So the first thing we're going to do is there's this little clip right here that we need to pop off so we can get that pin out. All right, but we're not going to take anything out. It's really simple. All we got to do, this clip's kind of weird looking, you'll see it. All right, it locates on one little cutout there on the pin, and it just kind of wraps around. So if you take your little micro tip, you can just pop it up and out just like that. And we'll put it back in together. It's pretty simple and straightforward, but definitely don't lose this little guy. Just set that down. Now what we need to do, take our larger flathead and compress that hammer spring. And what we're going to do is push on that hammer hinge pin right there. So the hammer's captured on this hinge pin, all right, and it also holds this cartridge drop lever in place. All right, so we'll go ahead and relieve the tension on that cartridge drop lever just by pulling up on that spring and getting it off of the lever itself. And then this hammer hinge pin, we're just going to push it out just a hair so we can release this little piece that captures that hammer spring so we can replace it real quick. So just push down on that hammer spring cap, push out just a hair, and now it'll bypass it. And there we go. So this hammer hinge pin, you know, the hammer hinges on it, obviously, and the cartridge drop lever is captured by it, which has the bend that holds that hammer spring in. So the hammer spring cap, real simple, just a little cap there, and our hammer spring right there. All right, so let's go ahead and compare this. I got the MCARBO spring here on my right, factory spring over here. It's kind of hard to tell. Let me just get a little shorter piece of it here. Oh yeah, you can definitely see a lot better there. So we didn't go too crazy on this one, but enough to get us a good trigger pull reduction. So let's put the stock spring aside. Let's go ahead and drop in our lighter custom hammer spring. We want to make sure we got a trigger pull reduction, but we didn't want to go too light to get light strikes. So it has to be an even balance. Put a little cap over there. Now we're going to compress it. Just do everything else in reverse. And it's nice that we don't have to take a whole lot apart. All right, so compress it enough and then push that hinge pin over so you can get that little piece to capture that hammer spring cap. All right, now with this, we got to put that little pin in there again. So what I've noticed is you really got to push that hinge pin all the way over so there's enough clearance for that little cutout. You can see it right there. That's how that little spring pin is going to capture that straight leg portion. So what we'll do is grab that little spring since we're talking about it. We're going to drop it right on. And what I like to do is take my micro tip and just use that to help guide it. And you'll notice if you get the straight leg in there first, find that's a little easier because it'll drop in just like that and it's captured, and now you can just pry that loop over that pin and you're done. Just make sure it's good and seated. And obviously this is something that's pretty thin that could bend easily. So I just like to kind of push on it, make sure it's nice and tight. You know, you don't want it falling out, and that would be a catastrophic failure. So it doesn't hurt to compress it a little bit more. You know, maybe you're worried about it, so you take your needle nose and you just kind of pinch it a little bit just to make sure that it's nice and captured. You know, especially if you had to remove it a bunch of times, but that's solid now. And the last thing we gotta do is put that little cartridge lever spring back on top of that little post on the cartridge lever. So just grab it and just pop it up and over. It's that little straight leg that we wanna get on top there. All right, just like that. So that's captured. So we wanna make sure we got good spring tension there. Good. I wanna make sure that hammer locks back. All right, pull the trigger, lock it back. Perfect. Perfect. All right, so now we can go ahead and put the trigger assembly back in. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and drop in the trigger assembly back into the receiver. Just need that little takedown pin right there. All right, so just turn it upright. We're going to take our trigger assembly, go ahead and lock the hammer back. We're going to drop the whole thing in. All right, just kind of lead in with this back portion here. You just want to make sure it mates up good with the back portion of the receiver. All right, and now you'll notice too, bolt release here will get in the way. So you can kind of compress it just like that, pushing on the button. And that'll allow you to easily put that trigger assembly back in. And then all we have to do is just line up the holes and make sure you're on the side here for the big head pin, you know, the side with the writing or the ejection port. All right, the other side's smaller. So we're just line up the holes and we're gonna go ahead and drop in that pin. Kind of wiggle the assembly around a little bit until that pin falls right through. The other trick I like to do is push down the table and you can look through, kind of line up that hole a little bit easier. All right, so it's mostly in there. Give it a little tap, and we are on our way. Done. All right, good. So we got the trigger assembly back in. Now we can go ahead and put the rest of the shotgun back together. All right, this is the last segment here. So action bar spring, action bar bolt, charging handle, magazine tube nut, and then your barrel. It's all gonna kind of go together real quick and easy. So take your action bar and action bar spring, and we're gonna slide it over the magazine tube. All right, it's all kind of set up and ready. Then you take your bolt, there's these two little features on the bottom. All right, they're gonna drop right into that action bar right there. You can see that cutout. It's gonna drop right in, and it's gonna kind of lock in place there. You're still gonna have to hold it, but just kind of keep it all compressed together, and then take your barrel and slide that magazine tube through the fore end. There's that hole on the bottom that it slides through, and get everything kind of jiving together here. We wanna get some spring tension on that action bar spring, so that we can hold that bolt and everything together. All right, now the barrel starts going through. Perfect. All right, you're gonna get to about this point and then go ahead and hit the bolt release. That's gonna allow you to push it all the way through. All right, now we're in there. So now we can take our charging handle. We're gonna go ahead and just drop it right in. Obviously you want this serrated portion facing towards the end of the barrel. And there's really nothing to this other than giving it a good little tap. This hammer's got a plastic end on it, which is really handy for this sort of thing. So I'm gonna use it. If you don't have that, you could just put some tape on it just to protect it, or just something, maybe a little piece of wood in between that and your regular hammer, and you'll be all right. So we got everything captured, man. We're almost there. Just need to put that magazine tube nut on there. Don't worry about this little follower. That's part of the magazine assembly. Just make sure you don't have too many rounds in there. All right, so we're just tightening up this magazine tube nut. Good and hand tight there. All right, man, we're all back together. Let's do a quick function check. All right, let's do a quick little function check. So we'll go ahead and rack the bolt there, place it on safe. All right, doesn't go, which is good. Place it on fire, pull the trigger. Oh man, it feels better already. All right, keep it depressed, rack it back, hit that release. Now we're gonna listen for that reset. Beautiful. All right, man, we're good to go. Let's measure this trigger pull. Let's see what we get for a modified trigger pull. 5 pounds, 3.1 ounces. Let's take one more to confirm. 5 pounds, 4.5 ounces. Well, there you have it, guys. This Stoeger M3500 feels so much better on that trigger pull, man. It is just much more functional. It's not that heavy 7.5 pound trigger. It's something that we can actually function and operate with. You want to get good rounds on target if you're hunting, especially. You don't want to miss, not with your buddies around. So it's really nice, smooth, lighter trigger. Just feels much more consistent and crisp than what you had to start with. It was just a really heavy wall at the end there, so really excited about it. It's drop test safe. I hate having to do this. Dudes always want to know though. So if you're running around with a round in the chamber on fire and you drop it, you're still good to go. No light strikes. We tested the crap out of it. Really love what we were able to achieve with the Stoeger shotgun. I love being able to get a nice reduction without any issues. So really excited to hear what you guys think about it. Good 25% trigger pull reduction. Just can't beat that. Otherwise, you can just run with the stock 7.5. Not as desirable. So really light, 5.5, puts you in that good operating range. Thank you, MCARBO Brotherhood, for your ideas and your support. And as always, happy shooting.